I swear I didn't mean to stare. But when she reached up to tug the frayed curtain rod, her shirt shifted just enough to show the scar on her collarbone, the one she never talks about. That's when I realized I was in trouble. Her name's Mara, lives in the brownstone across from mine, second floor, in unit with the dead geraniums in the window. I only knew her as the woman with the broken sink before last week. Now I know her laugh, low, infrequent, like something she used to use more often. It started because her faucet wouldn't stop leaking. Drip, drip, drip. I'd offered to fix it, half out of politeness, half because I couldn't stand how tired she looked that day, holding a wrench upside down like it was a question. She hesitated, then shrugged. If you break it worse, I'll just drown. Fair trade. That was Mara. Today was the second time I came over. The replacement part finally arrived, and I stood in her too-quiet kitchen, knee pressed to cold tile, hands wet, trying not to think about the fact that she was sitting just 3 feet behind me, reading, or pretending to. She wore a charcoal gray sweater with the sleeves pushed up to her elbows. No muck-up, hair barely brushed. She looked like the kind of woman who didn't care if you noticed her, and somehow that made it worse. "Where'd you learn to do this?" she asked suddenly. I paused, surprised by her voice. "My dad," I said, then added quickly, "Not that I'm any good." She didn't respond right away. When I turned, she was watching me, not smiling, just watching. "Your dad teach you to read women too?" I blinked. "I what?" "Nothing." She turned the page in her book, upside down. We both knew it. There was a silence then. Not awkward, just charged, like the room was suddenly smaller. The kind of silence where you realize neither of you is breathing all the way. I finished tightening the last bolt, maybe a little faster than I should have. Stood up, wiped my hands on my jeans. That should hold for now. She didn't move. "Thanks," she said quietly, but the word felt strange in her mouth, like she didn't mean just the sink. I looked at her, really looked. She looked tired, not physically, but in that deep, stretched-out way people get when they've waited too long to want anything out loud. "I should go," I said, not moving. "Should you?" Her voice was low, uncertain, and then she stood and walked to the window. The sun had already set, the city outside turning rust orange. She pulled the curtains closed slowly, like it meant something. And then she turned to me and said it. "Let's pretend we don't know better." My throat tightened. The space between us shrank, but neither of us moved. Her hand rested lightly on the curtain tie, knuckles pale. I could hear everything, the tick of her wall clock, my pulse in my ears, the hum of something starting that neither of us had asked for. I opened my mouth. I was going to say something smart, or brave, or nothing at all. Instead, her fingers brushed mine as she passed me, not by accident, and then she disappeared into the hallway, not looking back. I didn't leave. I told myself I was just giving her space to get whatever that was out of her system. But I stayed rooted to the kitchen floor, listening to her footsteps in the hallway like they were coming from inside my own chest. This is a bad idea. That's what I kept thinking. This is a bad idea. Mara isn't some random woman I bumped into at a coffee shop. She's my writing professor. Was. Still is, technically, until the semester ends next week. I was just the kid who volunteered to help when the class moved online and she needed someone techie to set up Zoom. Then the sink. Then this. I told myself she wasn't flirting, that she was just lonely, that maybe she didn't even know what she was doing. But I did. I knew the moment she closed the curtains and said that line, like we were both crossing into a place neither of us could return from. She reappeared in the doorway holding 2 mismatched mugs. "Tea," she said, "unless you're one of those tragic coffee addicts." "Tea's fine." My voice cracked a little. She handed it to me. No coaster, too hot, and her fingers brushed mine again. Longer this time. I didn't move. Neither did she. There was something almost childlike in the way she avoided my eyes afterward. She sat on the floor, back to the couch, motioned for me to do the same. No table between us now. No sink. Just carpet and steam and this insane heartbeat that I swear wasn't mine. So, tell me, she said, staring at the mug like it could save her, why someone like you bothers with writing when you could probably just blink and go viral online. I smiled. What makes you think I want to be seen by everyone? That got her. She laughed. Not loud, but real. Like she hadn't expected me to say anything worth remembering. Then she looked at me, and her expression shifted. Softer. Sadder. I used to think I wanted to disappear, she said. Now, I just wish I knew how to be visible without feeling exposed. I didn't know what to say to that. Not really. But I remembered what her hands looked like the first time I saw them. Calloused at the tips from writing longhand, nails bitten short. She didn't carry herself like someone delicate, but everything about her felt breakable. I see you, I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes flicked up, met mine. She didn't smile, didn't flinch either. The silence after that stretched so long it started to feel like its own language. Then, as if the moment needed one more twist, she reached out and touched my arm. Just once. Just enough. You don't have to go yet, she said. And I didn't move. I should have left the second she touched my arm. But I didn't. I stayed. On the floor. Mug in hand. Pulse in my throat. She leaned back, just enough for her shoulder to rest against the couch cushion behind her, knees drawn up, sweater sleeves pulled back down like armor. I watched the steam from her tea curl into the space between us. Watched her blink too slowly, like her thoughts were heavier than the room could hold. I had a student once, she said, not looking at me. He told me he was in love with me. I laughed. He wasn't serious. I swallowed. Were you? She didn't answer. Instead, she reached for her mug with both hands. Her fingertips brushed mine again, and this time I knew it wasn't by accident. I felt it in the hesitation, in the way she held her breath as she looked up at me through those tired, dark-ringed eyes. It was the kind of look that asks a question without words, the kind that doesn't need permission but waits anyway. I'm not him, I said quietly. That other student. I know. She nodded once. That's why this is worse. We both laughed. Too quietly. Too slowly. And then it happened. I don't know what made me do it. Maybe the way her voice cracked when she said worse. Maybe the way the light hit her cheek, soft and sharp like a secret. But I reached out, just to tuck a loose strand of hair behind her ear. She closed her eyes when I did it. Not dramatically, just like she needed a second. I froze, and that's when her phone rang. We both flinched. It buzzed again, louder this time, vibrating aggressively across the hardwood in the other room. She didn't move, just looked at me, waiting. You can get that, I said, voice suddenly hoarse. No, she said, not right now. Buzz, buzz. It stopped. Neither of us breathed for a few seconds after that. I should go, I said again. You keep saying that, she whispered, but your body never moves. I looked down at my hands, at the half-empty mug, at the edge of the curtain where a sliver of street light was sneaking in. Mara, my voice cracked. I didn't even mean to say her name like that, like it meant something, like I was tasting it. She leaned forward. We can lie to ourselves tomorrow, she said, just not tonight. And before I could answer, before I could even decide what I should say, there was a knock at the door. Sharp, unexpected. Both our heads turned toward it. Her spine stiffened. My stomach flipped. A pause. And she looked at me. Really looked and whispered, "Don't say anything." The knock didn't come again. Whoever it was must have left or decided not to push. But the room didn't relax. If anything, the silence afterward was louder, thick with the kind of things you only admit in your head. Mara didn't move. Neither did I. She stood there, barely breathing, staring at the closed door like it had just delivered a warning. Her arms crossed, not defensively, more like she was holding herself together. Do you want me to leave? I asked finally. She shook her head, slow. I want, her voice caught. I don't know what I want. I think you do, I said before I could stop myself. She turned to face me. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. Then she sat back down slowly, as if whatever was holding her upright had finally let go. I haven't let anyone touch me in over a year, she said softly, eyes on the carpet. Not even accidentally. It's like my skin forgot what it was supposed to feel like. I swallowed hard. You're not just touching me, she continued. You're reminding me what it feels like to be wanted without being consumed. And that scares the hell out of me. I didn't know what to say. Every word that came to mind felt too small. So I moved closer instead, not to close the space, but to be near it. She looked up. You shouldn't be here, she said. Her voice was steady now. You're too young to be tangled up in this. In me. I'm not tangled, I whispered. I'm choosing you. Her eyes flashed. Not with romance, with fear. Maybe anger. Maybe something she hadn't let out in years. You think you're choosing, she said. But you don't know me. You see this version of me. The one who makes tea and says things like, let's pretend, but that's not all of me. You don't know the mess, the days I don't speak, the mornings I can't look in the mirror. You think you're falling in love with me. She leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. Then tell me, she whispered. Tell me now, because if you say it, I might believe you. And if I believe you, I won't stop this. The room spun. My throat burned with all the things I wasn't supposed to say. I could feel her watching me, waiting for the words, terrified of them and needing them in equal measure. My lips parted. I was going to say it, but I didn't. She didn't look away. I didn't either. And then she asked, barely audible, but sharp enough to cut through everything. Do you want me? Do you want me? She asked. It should have been a yes. A clean, simple yes. But the words stalled in my throat. Not because I didn't want her, God, I did, but because I was terrified of what wanting her meant. I opened my mouth. Then her phone lit up again, this time with a name. I saw it, just for a second. Daniel, ex-husband. She noticed me looking. Her face changed. Not fear this time. Not anger. Something closer to resignation. You were never supposed to see that, she said, almost to herself. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Something in the room had shifted, like gravity had tipped slightly, just enough to throw everything off balance. She stood up quickly, went to silence the phone. But I couldn't stop staring at the screen, still glowing faintly on the table. You're still talking to him? I asked. She turned. Not like that. Then how? Her eyes didn't soften. They hardened, like someone who shared half her life with a man who still thinks he has the right to check in. I didn't know whether I felt jealous or stupid. She stepped closer. That doesn't change what's happening here. Between us. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Doesn't it? The pause was long. Too long. And then she said it. The thing I hadn't known was true until that moment. You remind me of him. My chest tightened. When we first met, she continued. Before he became everything else. You look at me the way he used to. Like I'm still worth wanting. The confession landed like a slap and a kiss at the same time. I'm not him. I said again, quieter this time. I don't want to be some echo of your past. She took another step. Close now. Almost too close. Then show me who you are. I should have kissed her. Or walked out. Or done anything other than what I did next. I pulled out the worn notebook from my bag. The one I always carried but never let anyone read. Her fingers hovered above it, then curled back. What's this? She asked. Every draft you ever gave us, I said. And every time you talked about writing like it was survival. I wrote it down. Because I was listening, even when I wasn't supposed to. She looked at the notebook. Then at me. You were never just another student to me, she said, her voice breaking slightly. But I pretended you were. And then, soft, almost broken, she whispered, I can't pretend anymore. She held the notebook like it was something fragile, something alive. Her thumb grazed the corner, flipping the pages with a kind of reverence. until she reached the one near the middle. The margin was messy, my handwriting worse than usual. Her eyes paused. "You wrote down what I said about silence being a character," she murmured. "You said silence tells the truth better than words ever could," I replied. Mara looked up at me, and something cracked in her expression. The strong, distant exterior she wore, like armor, slipped just enough to show the grief underneath. Not fresh, just unresolved. "I spent years being quiet in my own house," she said, "with a man who only loved the version of me that didn't ask for anything. I listened, really listened. So I learned not to need, not to expect, not to speak unless I was sure it wouldn't push him away." Her voice wavered. "And then you showed up, and suddenly I couldn't stop hearing myself again. The air between us tightened. It didn't feel forbidden anymore. It just felt like truth. Uncomfortably close. Undeniably real. I don't know what this is," she whispered. "What we are. But it scares me." "Me too," I said. "But not because I'm unsure." She held my gaze. For the first time, fully. "No flinch. No retreat." "I see you," I said again. This time it landed different. With weight. Not as a replacement. Not as a fantasy. Not as some tragic figure who needs saving. Her eyes shimmered. "I see the way you trace your fingers over books when you think no one's watching. The way you pause before speaking, like every word still costs you something. I see the way you hide that you're still healing." Her lip trembled. "You shouldn't have to carry that." "I'm not trying to carry it," I said. "Just to be someone who doesn't make it heavier." She laughed, soft and uneven, and then she stepped forward. I felt it before she touched me. The release, the decision. Her forehead rested against mine, and for a second, we didn't say a thing. The silence didn't feel loaded this time. It felt like peace. "I can't promise you a happy ending," she murmured. "I don't know how to do that anymore." "I'm not asking for perfect," I said. "Just real." We stood there, breathing in sync. And then she said, barely audible, "Stay." Not a command, not a plea, just a word she never used lightly. I nodded. "Just once. I'm not going anywhere." It's been 3 months since that night. The curtains are still drawn, but for different reasons now. She doesn't hide anymore. Not from the streetlight. Not from herself. Mara still moves like someone recovering from silence. She still hesitates before asking for things, like it costs her a piece of pride. And sometimes, she wakes up before sunrise and walks to the kitchen barefoot, pretending she isn't waiting for me to follow. But I do. Every time. I think love is less about fireworks and more about sitting beside someone when they can't explain why they're sad. It's learning how they take their tea, not just the temperature, but when they need it made without asking. Mara once told me she thought her life had already happened, that she was just moving through the rest of it out of habit. Now she's writing again, not because I fixed her. She was never broken. But maybe I reminded her of something she forgot, that she could still begin. We kept it quiet for a while, not because we were ashamed, but because we wanted it to be ours first, before the world turned it into a question mark. The department chair knows now, so do a few of my classmates. Reactions have been mixed, but no one knows what happens behind closed curtains. No one knows the softness of her voice when she reads my stories out loud, or how I reach for her hand under the table without thinking. The night I moved in, she left the porch light on. I didn't say anything about it, but I noticed. Of course I did. That's the thing about Mara. She doesn't say, "I love you" with words. She says it by leaving the last cookie in the box, by turning the record over before it hits silence, by staying in the room when it gets hard. And maybe I say it by noticing. That's the closest thing to a promise we've made. To keep paying attention. To stay when it's easier to shut the door. To speak even when we're terrified we'll say too much. I think that's what real love is. Not pretending we don't know better, but choosing each other anyway. Did you enjoy the story? If you felt something, even a small ache, then it did what it was meant to. What kind of stories would you like to hear next? Slow burns? Taboo tension? Quiet heartbreaks that heal into something beautiful? Tell me below. Your next favorite story could begin with just one sentence.